you definitely did.
Oh,
No, you did.
I don't think I want to use this one. It's too ghetto. Do you want to use this one?
Thank you
Is
so
that
much.
going to work? Nah, I got you.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. All right. Wait right here.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sankofa Videos and Books. How y'all doing today? Excellent, excellent, excellent. My name is Jonathan G. Mengistu. I'm one of the managers here at the store. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Thank y'all for coming out. So as I said, this is the illustrious Sankofa Videos and Books. We've been here since 1998, right by Howard University. We sell books by and about people of African descent, and we also definitely love to support our authors that are of or by, African descent, different things like that. So without further ado, I'm not going to yap y'all head off. Introducing to you, Kelis Rowe.
Should I be using this? Okay, then I will. Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for coming out. Here to celebrate Kelis Rowe in Finding Jupiter. Clap, clap. Just a little quick funny story. I was really, really impressed by Kelis when her book came out, and I'd read it, but I read it kind of in the height of the pandemic still. And so I was reading so many books and trying to escape so deeply that I knew that I loved Kelis, but I couldn't remember why exactly. Like, I couldn't remember the details of the book, but I knew it was incredible. And so I just got to reread it, of course, when I was preparing for this. And I just want to say that the last couple of days I've been doing all Stevie Wonder and who else? Jill Scott, because that's what your book feels like afterwards. And so just felt like very, very heartwarming again. And so I was able to remember how impressed I am by you. Yeah. And so what was it, a couple months ago when we were finally on a panel together, then Kelis was so excited to be interacting with me, and I was like, but I love you.
And it's because our stories are very similar, and it might be a question that you have further down the line, but our stories are very similar because we both are we were debut writers who got book deals during the pandemic. And probably more importantly, it was during a time where it was right in that sweet spot of literature where they had just started paying attention to stories about contemporary stories about teenage Black American youth that was not centered in Black American pain. So it was I could call it a sweet spot. It's a bittersweet spot because it all happened after George Floyd's murder, when across the board in entertainment, the conversation was, we entertain ourselves too much with our pain. How can we, what can we do as artists to tell more stories that focus on the humanity of Black people so that a George Floyd incident wouldn't be possible? So that, one of the examples that I give sometimes is there are very few other, if the tables had turned and there was a person of another race, maybe a white woman, even underneath the knee of a police officer, it would be more difficult for people to stand by. But we're so used to witnessing and entertaining ourselves with Black pain that people were just frozen in that moment. And so entertainment saw, and especially publishing saw, the need for books like ours that focus on, stories that focus on the humanity of young Black American teenagers and not necessarily their pain. And so when we connected after that panel, we talked forever because we write from the same heart space. It's not a sexy space, it's not Good Morning America, it's not a space that is necessarily organically amplified, but it's a place that we write from because we understand the importance of telling these kinds of stories.
Absolutely. And diving into just Finding Jupiter in general, we also came in a period after where there were a lot of romances being published by Black women or Black men, but it was kind of a requirement that one of the love interests be white at that time. And so you'll hear like your Nicola Yoons and people like that who are just like, I wanted to, but they wouldn't let it happen. And so Finding Jupiter is a romance who we have our black leads, and they're just beautiful together. And like I said, I just reread the book, and so it's all fresh in my mind. And so my first question, which is not directly related to Finding Jupiter, but is at the same time, we're all, grown adults. Why not write adult books for you personally? And why do you think it's so important that you use your talent to write directly to and for children?
Thank you. I love that question because I came of age. I was a teenager in the 90s. I came of age in the 80s when, I loved seeing other teenagers fall in love. I loved love stories. And I had to find myself in Molly Ringwald. I had to find myself in these other stories. And I did. I found ways to connect with these characters to kind of, because we look at art to kind of validate our experiences, especially as adolescents and teenagers. And so when I knew that I was going to write, when I knew that I was going to attempt to write a book at all, I knew that I wanted to write for teenagers just to create, a window for young black people to see themselves falling in love, to validate that their love is so cute. And, the young people say shippable and hashtagable and all of that. And so I wanted to give young people something to read. I didn't have those stories reflecting myself back to myself. I had to find myself. Like I said, I did. At the time, I didn't realize what was missing. But as an adult, writing literature, I was like, this is a chance to give teenagers sweet black love. And so that's why
And you did. And you did it so sweetly.
You.
And it's all just so poetic and beautiful.
You.
Yeah, the way that you write. And it's just seamless, it feels like. Another question. When and how did you discover that you knew that you wanted to be a writer and not just someone who loves to read and write privately, that you just knew that what your story was and you wanted to get it out into the world and not just keep it to yourself?
Okay. Yeah, it was a time, I was 40 at the time, and I always wrote. Writing and, academically as a kid, English was always my best subject. And after I graduated college, I moved away from my family, so I started, at the time, it was called a journal, like an online journal, a blog. It was before they became popular. And it was just a way for me to tell my family what happened today at Walmart or whatever. And when I started doing that, it was kind of like a creative outlet for me because my job wasn't creative, but I was a creative person. And so I've always been a writer. But when I decided to write a book and to write this book specifically, during the time that I had a blog, people would say, you should write a book, we love your voice, when are you going to write? And I always thought that I would write like creative nonfiction, kind of like comic essays and things like that, because that's what my blog was like. But something happened. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I kind of, that kind of overshadowed everything for me. And I was a stay-at-home mom by. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. My son was born and he needed spinal cord surgery, and so his earlier developmental stages, like I had to be his caretaker and to kind of usher him through his earlier years in life. So I was a stay-at-home mom, and that kind of eclipsed everything else for me. But then he reached an age where he was going to be going to school, and I couldn't go back to my previous career. I was in market research. That was my career. It was a different animal 10 years out with technology and everything, and I couldn't start over. And so my identity until then had been a mom, Zach's mom. And so I had a friend who's an author, and we decided to do a vision board. And so we kind of started looking at our lives and say, 5 years from now, where do you want your life to be? And, being an author was that for me. At the time, I didn't know it was going to be young adult. But yeah, when I sat down and really started thinking about, well, what do I want to project into the world? I thought about myself as a reader. And I thought about, wanting to do this for young people, like I said before. And when I came up with the story, I was like, I'm going to write this book. I was prepared to self-publish it on Amazon. And because at the time, publishing was not putting books out like this. But I knew this is what I wanted to write. And I was like, I wanted to put everything in this book that helped me as a teenager kind of survive being a teenager. So art, poetry, music, sweet, sweet first love, romance. And so that's how I knew what I wanted to be put in the book. And how I came up with the story, ultimately, I knew that I wanted to use poetry. At first, it was going to be original poetry. And then I switched over to blackout poetry. And when I started looking for poems in The Great Gatsby, which for me was the book that I read as a young person that made me start to experience empathy. And I experienced anger, at the characters. And I experienced emotions when I read that book for the first time. So I wanted to put that in this book. And so I started to find blackout poetry. And the poetry that revealed itself to me as I was doing it happened to be about a girl who was grappling with not experiencing the love from her father. Was he deceased? Was he present and absent? Was he, thin and gone? I feel like those questions, weren't the most important thing for me. I wanted to examine what does it look like for a girl to not experience love from a father, regardless of the reason. What does that absence look like, and how does it, affect the way she shows up in friendships and romantic relationships?
Yeah, and that was very, very thoroughly done, I'd say. And I want to say that it's funny that you said that you did your blog and I knew your blog and everything. Did you ever do like fan fiction as well? For anything?
Never did fan fiction.
No, you didn't touch fan fiction?
No, I never did fan fiction. Okay. Like I said, when I was an avid reader, but when I was growing up, it was like classics and Terry McMillan. Okay. There wasn't really a young adult space. There was middle grade, but there wasn't really a young adult space. Right. So it was I kind of skipped.
Okay. Yeah, so I did mine a little bit, but it wasn't from books. It was from this Atlanta boy band B5. Yeah, and I would write myself as the main love it. Yeah. Yeah, early 2000s.
No, I never did fan
fiction. Okay. I absolutely love and adore a cinnamon roll male main character in a book, and Orion is one of my favorites. Can you tell us more about why you chose for this young black man to be the one who is sensitive and wears his heart on his sleeve? Why is it so important that he's the one who's shown as being shy and more inexperienced? Can we talk a little spoilers? Yeah.
I know their first time can be poetic, and it can be loving, and and they can choose it if so.
Mhm. I'm always really, really impressed when authors know how to seamlessly and deeply explore grief in romance novels specifically. In Finding Jupiter, we kind of have two halves where Orion is in a situation, no, I'm sorry, Ray's in a situation where she's never known the person who's altered her life so greatly, whereas Orion had his little sister who he knew and they all loved, and her loss ended up fracturing their family. And all that just to say, especially with the way that their stories collide and it's just like puzzle pieces lining up one after the other, why did you find it important for a story that's so soft and tender already, that's going to explore romance and first love and everything, to also put grief in such a large way moving into your story?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's a good one. I haven't been asked this question before.
Really?
But okay, so we definitely wanted to put actual grief, right? Where you love somebody and they're removed from your life, they go away. But I also, but it's a story about Jupiter. It's about the girl. And because I was exploring the ways that the absence of paternal love affected her day to day, and her relationship with her mom, and the way she showed up for her friends, and the way that she, showed up in relationships with boys, and specifically with Orion, that she experienced the grief, but she never knew her father, but she knew he was missing. And a lot of times when we talk about, paternal wounds or father wounds that sometimes girls have to heal from, grief, there can be a grief of awakening where the girl realizes that she's not being loved, even though, the father might be there. So there's a grief that happens. There can be a literal grief, or what's the opposite of that? What's the other word? Metaphorical? Figurative. Thank you. Figurative grief. And but it looks the same. Like the outcome is the same. And so I wanted to make sure that her journey kind of showed what it looks like to grieve the absence of paternal love, not necessarily the absence of the father, because he was never there to begin with. Yeah.
And it was so sad to be able to experience it, not just through Ray's eyes, but then through her looking at the way that her mother has responded to it all, because she's gone her entire life of, this man was fantastic, but I don't know how in any of the details whatsoever, but he was amazing, he's incredible, but he's also the reason that my mother cries herself to sleep every night. And so her going out deciding that she's not really the type of person who should be loved because she doesn't know how to give it back, it just really, really was touching to be able to read that.
And it was fear, she was afraid because she didn't want something so badly or need something so badly and then not be able to access it.
Exactly.
So it's better to just not want it.
Yeah, that whole idea of I'm never going to love because I've seen how it hurt someone else before, but then for her mother to come out and say, I would have done it all over again, it's even more powerful, I feel like. Okay. Even though Finding Jupiter isn't a novel in verse, Ray herself has that stylistic way of turning other people's works of art into a completely new thing that becomes hers entirely. I wanted to know, is that something that you do yourself as well, that found poetry type of a thing?
No.
Really?
As a teenager, I wrote poetry. That's why it really was going to be original poetry. But when I was doing my little list of like everything that I loved as a teenager, and I listed everything, I had these two books that were impactful to me. Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston and The Great Gatsby. And so I was like, how can I put these books in my book? I can make poetry out of it and art. So yeah, it was just, honestly, it was just cramming everything in there. I just wanted to cram them in. And what I love about blackout poetry is that it's kind of it goes along so much with what I said before, where, I'm a huge fan of 80s romance films. None of them were black, but I'm obsessed, with every Molly Ringwald movie, with Dirty Dancing, all of those. And the art exists, and we find ourselves in it. And the things that the human strings that I connected with in those characters that were nothing like me, that still pull at my heartstrings are, it's like an example of how you can, look at a classic novel like The Great Gatsby and look at the page and create something that speaks directly to you or that represents you. It's like, a lot of times, young Black people have to find themselves in art to appreciate it and to turn it into something that they can really love. And so it was important for me to put blackout poetry in that sense, so I could say that all the time. Find yourself in the art. Like, it's wonderful that we're creating art now, where they can look at it and say, that's me, or that reminds me of my, whatever. But also, find yourself in the art.
And even if that means you have to blatantly put yourself in it, because I would do that sometimes with reading the Hunger Games. Katniss was me the entire time that I was reading that book. But I just knew that you were going to say, during all my free time, that's what I do is blackout poetry. It really was very, very beautiful. Do you think that like novels in verse or something is something you would do?
Yeah, I would draw. As a teenager, my creative outlets now, I have kids and stress and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my creative outlets. But as a child, I drew all the time. I thought I was going to be an artist. That's what I wanted to be.
Well, you are.
So I got a chance to do a little bit of,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. Okay. I loved that roller skating at a row rink was something that was the ultimate first thing to bring them together. Also love I don't always love at first sight, but Orion was just so head over heels for Ray the very moment that he saw her. And even though she was pulling back, it was like something like a magnet kind of like pulling them together. And so that being expressed at roller rink and stuff was just so cute. Is that something that you guys do out in Memphis?
Actually, yes.
Love to hear it.
There's an iconic roller skating rink in Memphis. It's not open anymore. It actually closed the year that I placed this book in the same year that the Crystal Palace closed.
Wow.
It was a bigger part of the story, but in editing, it kind of got pushed away because they were like, we don't want to make it a, that kind of story.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's an iconic roller skating rink, walking distance from my house, where we spent a lot of time growing up in my growing up years. And so I wanted to kind of immortalize the Crystal Palace in my work. So that's why I ended up putting the skating rink there. Okay. And love at first sight. It's one of those things, you have people who hate it, and people who love it. But I wrote it because that was my experience when I, now I've been married over 30 years, and when my husband and I met, for him it was love at first sight, and for me it was like, who are you? Like, do you know who I am? Or like, do you see me? What So it's that kind of thing, and so I wanted to kind of put that in a book as well, because love at first sight happens, and it's very sweet when it does, and so that was why I wanted to include that.
Yeah, I love it. And people they're always asking me for my book, Briarcliff Prep, if Q was like someone who I knew in the past, and just like, that is the boy that I wish that I knew in the past. So it's beautiful that, you had that experience.
Yeah, my husband was a very sweet boyfriend.
Love it. Okay. You write about Memphis in your stories with such reverence. And I say stories because I have gotten a little glimpse of Kelis's new book, and it's so beautiful already, just a little bit that I got. Why was it important for you to weave Memphis in this story as much as love or grief?
Yeah, for two reasons. I'm writing about teenage life, and my whole teenage life happened in Memphis. I left right after college, and so, that kind of teenage coming of age experience is just solid in my head. So I could, write what right? So I wrote what I knew. But beyond that, I feel like Memphis has such a harsh, you're getting, so it has such a, like, when you hear about Memphis in media, in news or whatever, it's like not the, it's like negative news or a negative connotation of what life is like for young people in Memphis.
You brought a softer light to Memphis for sure. Yeah.
And it's like, I grew up there. That wasn't my life. Like, and I grew up in the hood, So it's important for me for young black people in Memphis and in most inner cities to have stories that show a wider range of what life is for young people who live in these cities.
Okay. Yeah.
something they can look at and love and feel proud of and relate to.
And it's always good too when you have like those landmarks and stuff that I know that people who are from Memphis will pick it up and be like, oh, that, and even your roller rink that they have closed down for whatever reason. It always feels good to put those links in there.
Absolutely.
For me personally, whenever I am starting out with a book, I always have a Pinterest board or I have a playlist. I'm really, really big on having a movie or a TV show that I'm like watching repeatedly throughout the process of my writing. I was wondering if you had something like that for Finding Jupiter. I know that we talked about Their Eyes Were Watching God and The Great Gatsby. Was there any other piece of media that you kept close to your heart that really, really inspired Finding Jupiter?
Not really. What I did do, though, was I did create playlists. I create playlists for everything I write. And so I created a playlist that felt like what the teenagers would listen to or that felt like the mood of the book at the time. But in terms of like, engaging in art or things that inspired me while I was writing it, not really. Yeah.
Okay. That's all right too.
I listened to Anti by Rihanna. It has nothing to do with this. Well, somewhat. There might be some songs on there, but that's, first of all, it's my favorite album. Don't get me started about that. But that's the only music that I can write to, actually. Is that. And I feel like it's because I've listened to it so many times that it's like white noise. So I don't want to sing and dance to it like Beyonce. I can't listen to Beyonce.
I was just about to say, yeah, Beyonce was in there. She was all throughout
Well,
the
Beyonce will be in everything I create.
Okay. And she should. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the main character is a Beyonce fan.
Yes, she is a big one. And I love that she still is using her CDs and stuff, where Orion was like, really CDs? She said, well, what about it? Yeah. I love that she's so just assertive and she's not the cookie cutter. I love that that's more so his role in the story, where she's very assuredly herself and there are things that she's trying to change about herself, like not getting so defensive so fast and recognizing that he is coming from a good part, a good place, but at the same time, she has her walls built up and for good reasons. As far as, even as far as like not sharing her real name with most people because it comes with a painful backstory. So you're going through like, what is it, maybe halfway through the book before you figure out, oh, her name's not Ray. I just love that she's kind of closed down into herself. Until she's able to and wanting to and see someone who is worth opening up to. And there's so few people in the book that she will do that with.
And that was part of her journey. And it was important for me to write a story like that because I was a closed-off teenager. You know, I'm still closed in a lot of ways, but what I want young people who are like that to know is that it's not only, it was something you just, the way you phrased it. You said that she was, I lost it, I'm sorry. But it's like she's closed. But I want young people to read this and see that it's you might think that you're creating a safe place for yourself by not allowing other people in. But it's actually the opposite. It's safer to allow people to come close to you, and it's you can experience life. You can experience a fuller friendship. A fuller, romantic relationship, a fuller relationship with your parents if you allow yourself to be vulnerable in spaces with them. Yeah. Absolutely. It's healthier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I just want young people to know now, so they don't have to figure it out by 30 in therapy, Like live so you can love big the first time,
Poetic. This is what I mean. Read the novel in verse. One of these days. I did want to ask, what is your fan cast for 3 characters you can pick?
Okay. So Orion, the boy from Blackish. What's his name?
No. The younger one?
No, the handsome boyfriend from Grownish. I'm so
Trevor
bad.
Jackson?
Trevor Jackson.
He's a cutie,
He might be kind of old, but hopefully he'll still look young. But when I was writing, talking about vision boards, when I was writing, I had him on my Pinterest board as Orion. And Ray, I have Coco Jones because she's tall and,
beautiful.
Yeah. Yes. And Brianna. For Brianna is Ray's best friend and roommate from school. Who did I have as Brianna? I don't think I had a Brianna.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you have one?
Actually, Yara Shahidi kept floating
Yeah,
throughout my
she-
mind
yeah.
for
Yeah,
when I
she's
was
right
reading
there.
Brianna. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But Ryan and yes, those the two main characters. I kind of have them on my Pinterest board.
Okay, yeah, I
as
think
was
that Trevor
writing, 'cause I
Jackson and
saw
Coco
them.
Jones are like very, very good
Yeah.
fits for them.
And they have like the
Mhm.
past, history they worked together. in the
Working
past.
together, you
Yeah.
can get put like their specific Pinterest pins
Yeah,
up
like
and be
then and
"This is
now."
them." Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Um, we know that Hollywood is missing out when it comes to representing Black coming of age stories, specifically
Mhm.
Black young romances
Mhm.
or rom coms. What books other than Finding Jupiter would you say would be perfect for the big or small screen?
Everything that Liara Tamani has written. There's a book called All the Things We Never Knew. It's so poetic. Like everything she writes is also really poetic, and it's a basketball love story. It's like love and basketball, but they're teenagers the whole time in high school. That one I would love to see on the big screen. What else? Obviously Briarcliff Prep. I'm at a loss.
Okay.
I'm at a loss. But yeah. But Liara Tamani is I'm obsessed with her work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And just two more. Okay. Do you have any like niche dreams for Finding Jupiter or any of your works? I know that for me personally, I have a dream of one book of mine one day being like a Broadway play or something. Is there somewhere that you see Finding Jupiter that's just like not commonly said?
Yeah. Well, my Finding Jupiter and my second book and also my third book. The second and third books don't exist in the world yet. They're coming, but they're not here yet. But they all take place in Memphis around the same few months of summer and school.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see like a Netflix series or something like that. But I do have an idea for another book that I think I would love to see it as a stage play.
Okay.
Where it is part of it is in verse.
Yeah.
And part of it is just really poetic prose. But yeah, I have, my big dream is to have, my work kind of immortalized on film. I mean, everybody who writes,
Yeah. Want to see it
you
happen.
want to see that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, wait, you don't want to talk about what's next in detail, or
I
do
can
you?
talk about
What's next for Kelis Rowe?
Yeah, I would love to talk about what's next. So, I love writing romance, and my editor loves me writing romance. And so when I turned in my second book, they liked the romance, but what they loved more was the main character's journey with her mental health struggle. And you have a character in Briarcliff Prep who's also going through her struggles. But so in the editing process, this kind of newer story emerged where we're examining. Readers are going to be going on the journey of this girl who's grappling with kind of staying grounded in reality and not allowing her anxiety to spiral her out into negative behavior.
Yeah.
And it's a different take on it's a different type of story about a teenage girl's mental health. So I'm really proud of it, and I'm really excited to share it.
Yeah, I can't wait to
next
read.
year.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I know that I said that it was done, but just one last, more so of a comment, because like I said, I'm very, very impressed with your writing style and
Thank
everything
you.
that you do. I love it. And like I said, this is more of a comment, but with Orion and his father, their relationship really, really stuck out to me in a way that I loved and adored because Orion gets that apology. And so does Ray at the end of the book. But there's just a huge thing. I feel like I remember distinctly what it was like to be a teenager and people just refusing to say, what if she had a bad day, or like what, like, just there's no grace there. And that's like a common thing for a lot of us growing up. You have a roof over your head, food in your stomach, what is there to complain about? You need to do what it is that you need to do. But Orion can pinpoint the moment where his father switched. And of course, it's for good reason that that's happened, but to have never received his father back again until he got to the point where he was old enough to really say something and confront him, and only because his father's mistakes have been thrown out into the wild and everything. But I just love moments where parents are saying I'm sorry in books, and so you wrote that very, very well.
Thank you. Yeah, and it was important for me to write a black dad who was strong, a strong black dad, you know, a Memphis black dad, who loved his son so hard. And a lot of times, you know, when you have a first child, it's your first time being a parent. You try to do the best you can do. And, you know, I wanted to write a black dad who loved his son in a way that he thought was loving, and a son who could find the words eventually and ultimately to find a way to let his dad know that this is actually how I need to experience love from you. Or, you know, like I wanted to give that example to young people who are, you know, at the stage where they're finding their voices. And I wanted to give them, an example of that. Like you can communicate to your parents, hey, love me like this.
Yeah, and it's so important to me that he is crying throughout the book, because that felt like
baby.
very reflective of me throughout my teenage years. It's just like you were doing things, and I'm going to cry about it because I'm sad now.
And black sensitive boys exist.
Exactly.
You know, we can't hide them away and you know, make it a taboo thing that, you know, that it's weakness. No, they cry. They're human. They cry because they're human too. Yeah.
And yet your characters are just so empathetic and ready to explore the world and live and grow. And I can't wait to see where else we're going to go with Kelis Rowe and her writing in the future. But yeah, thank you for writing Fighting Jupiter. It's been such a blessing.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank y'all for coming. Are we going to do
Q&A? Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
I don't have any questions. You literally answered every question I had. But as a 41-year-old, I just want to say thank you so much for writing this, because this is what I wanted when I was a teenager. Instead of I'm happy I read Coldest Winter Ever and all that, but I was really like Zane and
exactly.
Oh my gosh, I really wish I had this when I was younger, you know. And then my daughter, I would, you know, introduce these books to her because she was a historical fiction girl. I don't like her historical fiction. I don't want anything else. And I'm like, well, just try this.
Yeah.
Oh God, this is good.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoy this. Like I'm a YA girly all day. But also you already spoke on it. Like when Orion spoke up to his father, hands down my absolute favorite part, because it doesn't happen. You know, kids can't. You can't speak up. So I really enjoyed that, and the fact that his father apologized.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you're a YA girl. We have 2 other YA authors in the audience.
Any other questions? Yes.
Oh, well. Halo by Beyonce. And that's the theme song for my book, because this girl has, she's just built a wall up around herself where she feels, you know, like a fortress almost. She feels safe in there. She feels in control because she controls her relationships with, you know, boys, until she meets Orion, who kind of is an actual whole person and kind of forces his way in for her to see him as a whole person, not just, you know, as a boy. Yeah. So Halo by Beyonce. What's another one? I'm blank. Beyonce is the queen.
Afterwards, I was listening heavy to Cross My Mind, Jill Scott.
Okay, yeah.
That felt really, really important.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
But all my playlists are on my website.
Okay.
They're all linked on there. Even for the next book, if you want to sneak peek into, you know, the dark mind of a brooding black teenage girl.
Right. Okay. Any other questions before we close out? Alrighty then. Thank you guys so much for coming out today.
Thank you.
And you'll be signing?
Yeah, I would love to sign whatever books you have. I can sign them.
Perfect. And I want you to sign my book too.
Okay. Thank y'all for coming so much. This was great. And thank you, Sankofa, for having us. I think I'm going to sign at that table back there, the one that's set up high. I'll sign there. Thank you so much for your question.
I'm just so happy. I was just like, all we read is